your deepest pain point is, that's your superpower. When that gets healed, it's just the passion for that, for no one ever to have to feel that is what drives everything I do, every podcast episode, every YouTube channel, every client. So now everywhere I go, I have one mission, and that's to love in a way that serves whatever's in front of me.
Hi, Sheila. Welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. Now, as a certified hypnotherapist, a
Yes.
parent coach, an educator, and a podcast host, what does peak performance mean to you?
To me, peak performance means mind mastery. It is about how to use our consciousness in a way that fully serves our highest dreams. And most people don't know how to do that and how to use the tools of their consciousness. And we've got it all wrong. We're not even teaching people how to use it very well.
This sounds like something everybody wants to do, at least they say they want to do. And it perhaps may not be a desire problem, but like you explained, maybe an approach problem. So, what is the first thing someone needs to be aware of to start this journey?
Okay. We have to define what the tools of our consciousness are and how it's supposed to work because most people are walking around letting their left brain rule their world. The analogy I have for that is if your left brain is in charge, that's when you can tell is it's just running amok and saying things to you don't even want to hear. The left brain is supposed to be our servant to get the things done for us that we want to do because we're so alive and so empowered. The most important tool of our consciousness is our intent and our imagination. Those two things work together. So we should be spending our time with our mind, intending and imagining how we want to feel. It's going to give us all this energy. And then how we're envisioning that, what we want to be moving towards, that's the captain of our ship. Then the left brain is our servant. Yes, we want that. We're going to get that resume done. Yes, we're going to reach out to that person because we're going there. Then our work is effortless. So it's our intent and our imagination that is our superpower tool. And we're not even really taught to use it. And in fact, when we're children, most of us lose the ability to use it because we're put in schools which tear it down and break it down rather than encourage it and let it go free.
But how do you go about bridging this gap? Because there are so many people who have the hopes and the dreams. There's no
Yeah.
scarcity of the imagination. But to be able to then convert that and talk to the other side of the brain so that it's actionable steps and they can follow it out, that's what's missing.
That's exactly right. So, on the long, slow way to do it is when you hear that left brain just talking to you and saying, I don't know, there's 50,000 other people doing that thought doesn't serve you. So, the slow, long way is to talk back to it and say, that thought doesn't serve me. What I will tune into is I have a deep, undeniable desire to do that. That might mean that I'm meant for it and that my path might just be laid out for me as long as I do the work because that's what I'm here for. So you talk back to it in a way that's empowering and passionate, and then it eventually, this is the slow way, hypnosis is the fast way, we'll get into that, but eventually if it keeps getting facts from you that are very feasible, it will stop giving you that same crap. Because that voice in people's heads, it's since I have a teaching background, the analogy I love to use is that voice in your head is a bunch of teenage boys, maybe football player types that come into a classroom and have a very weak substitute teacher. They're not going to learn that day. They're not going to do anything productive that day. They're going to run that classroom and nothing good's going to happen. That's what most people have going on in their heads, and they can be in charge of it. But imagine that teacher walking in and saying, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Nothing positive is happening. Guys, sit down. Page 36. We're going to learn about the coolest thing today, and you're going to love it. Page 36, let's go. All those guys and gals and whoever are going to sit down and say, yes, ma'am. That's what our imagination and our intent and which brings up our passion and our energy does to that left brain. I don't really care what you have to say. This is what we're made for. This is what we love. Can you just get my resume done for me? Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
What was the internal turning point that made you realize that the classroom was no longer a place where you could serve at the highest capacity?
The people who are peak performers know that they must be in their integrity and aligned with their values and everything they do, and they won't settle for less. I was a damn good teacher, if you don't mind me saying that. I worked very hard to make that classroom meaningful to every student in it. But when the institution and the system had my hands tied as to be able to do great work, I couldn't stomach it anymore. For example, the amount of discipline in the building, in the facility, in the administrative system was not serving kids to grow. It was enabling bad behavior, and it just wasn't serving them, and I couldn't believe in it anymore.
Can you give an example?
Unfortunately, yes, I can. There are two things. One, I was teaching French in a school that was pretty low income population, and a lot of those kids just didn't need my class. And they needed hands-on skills to get them a job out of high school. And I felt that. And I had a handful, everyone loved my class, but it wasn't relevant, and I knew it. So I was working very hard to try to make something relevant that wasn't relevant to them, and I knew it. So that was a big part of it. The other part was just this upside down, backwards value system. So I think there was a culture of, because these children, a lot of them came from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, there was a culture of too much enabling. Everybody, no matter where they're coming from, wants to find out that they have power within them and then get them on the path. But there was a lot of enabling of bad behavior and just excusing things. So one example was a colleague of mine in a classroom dropped an instrument and leaned down, and a boy picked up his phone and took a picture of her chest. And so she took that phone away and she said, "Oh my gosh, that's completely inappropriate." And then called a meeting with the administrator. And then they had a meeting. And when they sat down, the administrator directly attacked the teacher in front of the student. Instead of that becoming a sexual harassment issue or whatever it might be, she said that was his personal property and you had no right to do it. So it was this upside down, backwards system that the kids could do anything and the teachers could do nothing. And so I couldn't believe in it.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons.
So 17 years you prepared in the classroom and became better and better at the job. And there are so many people who are listening to this who are like, and we were talking about this right before our podcast started. That I went through that phase as well as an engineer when I was just at some point in my life, I was like, I'm ready for something new. But many people don't know how to make that transition. So when you were looking at yourself, how did the classroom prepare you for your work as a hypnotherapist? And how did you even decide what you wanted to do?
Yes, that's a great question. My whole life prepared me for what I'm doing now, and I don't regret any of those teaching years. What it really gave me is I could read an entire room of 30 people and know what each one of those needed. I could feel and intuit what every student needed, have a plan for where I want to take them that's going to be good for them, and know that there were very many different needs in that room, and be able to on the spot bring that one in with what he needed and her with what she needed and get them going and make it meaningful for them so that they had a reason to. So that was one. I could really feel a room. But second, it was imperative that I made it meaningful to them. And again, I was teaching a subject that wasn't particularly meaningful to them. So I had to know them, care about them, know their lives, make connections. I had to know all 30 students well enough to find some way to connect what we were doing to them so it would make meaning. And there were some days where I just set the curriculum aside. I could tell people were struggling and they needed someone to care about them. And sometimes for a class period, we would take time just to do interpersonal growth lessons. And I just did that. And they loved it. They were so hungry for it that it was more important than the curriculum, and I knew it. So I would do that from time to time, and they would come into my classroom, and it felt like home. It felt like someone cared about them. But as far as that's what helped me know I needed to be a therapist too. I felt for these kids, I felt for their families, and here I was teaching them something they didn't need. I even would sometimes recommend there are certain kids who do not need to be in there. And they would say, yes, they do, because we don't want to take the college opportunity away from them. Some of these kids knew they had a plan, and this was just in their way. And the school wouldn't get it out of their way. That made me know I wanted to be a therapist. And I already was a parent coach, sometimes working with parents. And then that's what led me into my path of hypnotherapy. But as far as taking the leap, that was a pretty big decision. I could have just taught for 7 more years, retired, and done whatever I wanted. But I can't be out of my integrity. And your peak performers know that. We are peak performing when we are all lined up with our passion, our talents, and our values all at the same time. And we're not willing to sacrifice those. So I told my husband that I was really thinking about taking this leap. And then I just went on a weekend away and I just deeply asked myself. And every single experience in that weekend just made it was so clear that I wanted to so badly. And the thing that I realized was I would rather work until I'm 90 doing something that I love that much and is so meaningful and is all aligned with my values than do anything for a few more years and stop. I don't even want to retire. I want to do something meaningful until I die.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
100%, 100%. People look at people like yourself, listen to people like yourself, and they think, ah, she's a superwoman. If I was only like her, I would be able to do all these wonderful things as well.
That's
What
hilarious. I
were
don't think.
what were some fears and doubts that you had and you faced during
Oh,
this
yeah.
transition, and how'd you go about overcoming them?
That's a great question. Once I decided to stop, I had 1 year. I didn't want to leave them high and dry. So I said, this is going to be my last year. So that last year was like a breakup of a relationship. You'd have really good days, and I'd be like, am I making the right decision? And then it was like that push pull of, I hope I'm doing the right thing. So that was not easy at all. Fears, yeah, I did have fears. What if I'm coming into becoming a therapist in my late 40s, early 50s? What if I can't get an internship? What if I can't, other places don't fall into place? So those were definite fears. Another one was that it was going to take me. So my twins were still in high school in all the sports at the time when I wanted to make that leap. So I was going to go to school part time for marriage and family therapy. That was going to take me 4 years plus a year of interning under somebody. So it was going to take me a long time to get there too before I was even making money. And so that was another big, obstacle. But what led me through that, and this is what the power of the mind and knowing how to use all the tools of our consciousness are so important, because our intuition is another one of the most important parts of ourselves. My intuition, I just kept checking in with it. I'm like, do I really not want to spend all that time and that money? Or do I really want to have something I love so much that I want to do it for the rest of my life? And do I really want to? And my answer was just, yeah. It was just, yes, I want to so badly. I would do it if it took 10 years. I heard an example in a book, I think it was Good to Great, but I'm not positive, about someone who was deciding to write their book. And he asked himself, how much would someone have to pay me not to write this book? And he's like, when I got to 100 million, I decided I had to write the book no matter what. And that's how it felt for me. I have to do something. I want so badly to do something I love for the rest of my life that I wouldn't care if it took 10 years. I wouldn't care if it took 20 years. That's what showed me that I had to do it. I needed to. I was meant for it.
But what was the source of this strong desire? Because you had a good life, a good job, a husband and kids, and
I did.
a lot of times the minutia of life sometimes gets in the way. When you look into your past, when you look into your own story, what was the reason for this drive to want to do this?
I got you. That's a great question. I couldn't stand it here. There were years of, even though my life was good, there was this deep feeling of, I can't stand it here. I can't stand the way it is. I can't stand that just because we're born, we wake up and we have 10,000 things we just have to do in order to even survive. And I also had childhood pain that was still in there. And so I would sometimes wake up. Yeah, you say I'm superwoman. Let me just show you where I came from. I would wake up and in the morning, it would feel like relief to think of dying. I'd picture myself dying and it would feel like relief from this feeling I had inside. So, this is why I'm so passionate about what I do. A lot of people have those feelings. This is not a perfect world. We're not walking around in bliss. So, where does this passion come from? It comes from I couldn't stand feeling that way. And I had to find out, how does anyone overcome that to where even when the world isn't changing always in the way you want it to, you can still feel peace, joy, and happiness? I had to know the answer to that question. So, long story short, I've been on a 30-year journey of seeking the answers to those questions, reading tons of books about what people say about that who seem to know, and then applying those to my life. And they proved to be true. So I went from someone who woke up dreaming about dying, even though my life on the outside was good. I have good relationships. I loved my kids. There was still this trauma pain and this world pain. I had to overcome it because I couldn't stand it. And when I did, my life took me on this positive upward spiral. Now, you see, I'm one of the most happy, joyful, peaceful, and passionate people I've ever met, but I know how I used to feel. So that is what drives me, and my clients feel it. I want, when they come to me and they have those kinds of feelings or smaller or larger versions of those, I am so passionate to take it out of them because I know the difference. So I don't know if that answers your questions in enough specificity, but that's the summary of it. I was in a place of, I don't even know why I came here. I kind of can't stand it here, to now waking up daily with passion, joy, excitement, aliveness, and a feeling of I know what to do when it's hard. I know that I'm okay, even when things don't go well. But that was a journey.
You talked a lot about alignment, and you also talked about intention. How
Yes.
does someone know they're out of alignment, even if they look successful from the outside?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are two ways. One is the feeling of, gosh, no matter what I do, it doesn't work well. On the outside, if we're really working hard and dang it, we're just not getting results, that is evidence that there's something inside that needs our attention. Okay. There's something inside because, and the reason I can say that is because I've got to talk about limiting beliefs a little bit. The way a limiting belief gets into our subconscious is not our fault, but once it's in there, it runs us. So this is why this knowing about the subconscious is so important too. So we're a buried treasure. Most people are a buried treasure. We are born just perfect and beautiful, and we just want to grow, explore, become, find out what we love, find out what we're not here for. But we get buried with a limiting belief. And I'll just give you an example. Let's say a child is born and the parents are just so busy. They love their child, but they just want the child to become independent. Like they always give them things to play with so that they can go off and parents can do their things. Not that they don't love the child, but the child gets this message. I don't get attention. I don't get love. And so they then become, rather than a regular old child, happy go lucky child, they become, how do I get attention? It's a false self that gets created because of the belief that's now in their subconscious that I don't somehow get attention just by being me. I don't get love just by being me. That belief in their subconscious will run until they do something about it. If they're believing that, then walking around with that belief is like the filter we're filtering reality through our glasses. We see it, we end up self-perpetuating it in our world. So we don't get results because it's running us. Our subconscious runs 95% of our behavior until we do something about it. Okay. So that's one way. If that's happening, there is something inside that needs one's attention. And hypnotherapy is the fastest way I have found to get that out. I can get that out of a person in 2 sessions. And it's quite remarkable. We can get into that later. But the second thing you said about how do they even know what to tune into if they're struggling? One principle that is really important is that our outside reflects our inside. How we're treating ourselves is how we are in our relationships. So if we're in relationships that are not deeply satisfying, it's because there's something about ourselves we don't accept or feel good about or love or believe is worthy of love. Okay. So it's always an inner problem if it's not quite working. And if someone's not sure how to do, that's where we all come to at some point. We're like, I can't do this by myself. If inside someone tries to go in and tune in and it's just too convoluted, it's just too mixed up, and they can't find the forest through the trees, a lot of us find ourselves at some point, and that's when we need a therapist, a hypnotherapist, someone to help us navigate. There's a great deal of inner awareness skills that we need to build, and that's a deepening the relationship with ourselves. So it's always an inner problem. But briefly, I was going to become a marriage and family therapist, but on my path, I had to study hypnosis in that program. I just want to say this now because it blew my mind. Hypnotherapy is the most underrated, powerful tool. And that's why I love to get on and talk about it, because when I started studying that, I added that to my credential. And it was hypnosis. When I studied that, I knew I could help people way faster because I had been in talk therapy for 14 years, but I can help people in 5 or 6 sessions. It's dramatically faster and longer lasting because it deals directly with the subconscious where those buried limiting beliefs live. And until you get those out of the way, you can try and set goals and have intentions, but that limiting belief in there is going to be what blocks you all the time. So when people feel like, man, I work so hard and I just can't get results. Man, I set these goals and I go after them, but then something always gets in my way. That's because there's something in their subconscious that's a limiting belief that is running them and it's getting in their way.
When we think about hypnosis, for most people, they imagine something they saw on TV, somebody on stage pulling people over, putting them
Yes.
on to sleep, quacking like a chicken. What actually happens to the brain
I know.
in a hypnotherapy session?
Yeah. And those examples, everyone does think of that. And when I think of that they don't do what I do, but we use the same tools. And I think how it is fascinating to think, how can someone on stage make someone behave in a way? And I know people who have gone to those shows and they're like, I went with my buddy and he's not like that and he did that. And it is wild. But that is not what I do. But what's going on there is that when you are in a hypnotic state, when you are just so relaxed, what's out of your way is the critical factor. It's the one sort of watching and going, this is strange. What's she doing now? It's that one that's watching, criticizing, comparing, asking questions about. That's just relaxed. It's out of the way. So, what's important about that is now, because that's out of the way, and I'm speaking to someone in a very calm and relaxing and soothing way, and they've tuned in to know that my intention is nothing but to help them, then when I start saying words that matter to them, that have to do with their deepest longings and their intent for their life, right? They're going to hear my words, care about my words, and their self is going to absorb those words. So what happens is you become able to deeply focus on what I'm saying. And then your subconscious absorbs that message because that critical factor is out of the way, not criticizing, not comparing, not doing its work. And so those words get in. And what the power of it is that when someone, like let's say somebody wants to lose weight, for example. Now, I love doing those things, but I also love more than anything removing trauma from somebody. But I'll just use a weight loss example. If I am talking to their subconscious and I'm showing their subconscious that there's this one thing they keep doing and it keeps taking them to pain and destruction and disappointment. And I show them the pictures of if they keep doing that, it's going to get worse and worse. And I make that picture pretty ugly. They're repulsed by it and repelled by it. And the deep part of themselves knows they do not want that. And then I'll say something like, however, you've already decided that you don't want to go there and you only have to do one thing. I'll give them just one thing. And it's not even about eating. It's more about paying attention to their feelings. Because most of the time, anyone's overeating is because they want to cover up a feeling they're feeling. So in our session, I will have already talked to them about what to do with feelings from this day forward. So then in their hypnosis session, I'll say that from this day forward, you just have to practice. If you practice this one thing, you'll never have to go down that road again. And then I'll show them where this will take them, this practice. And I'll show them beautiful things that they deeply long for in their life, slowly unfolding and then more unfolding. And then because one thing changes, more becomes possible. And then I'll add that's also now obtainable and possible in your life because of just this one thing you are now practicing. What happens when they leave is what's inside of them will signal them. So it's easier. It's just easier. And then, for example, they may have one guy, I'll just use him. He came back after one session. And I said, there's going to be something undeniably noticeable after the first session. It goes even deeper after the first session. But so I said, what changed for you? Was something undeniable? And he goes, oh, yeah, definitely. I'm like, what was it? He goes, we had pizza. I have never not had 4 pieces of pizza. And after 1.5 pieces, I was like, I'm good. And he's looking around, what happened? How did that happen? Because deep inside of him, he wants something bigger than just overeating. He's only overeating because he has a feeling that's too uncomfortable to feel. But now he's practicing feeling his feelings and realizing he can feel those, he can nurture those, he can get through that, and he doesn't need to use food to cover stuff up. And then in that moment, it just signals him like we're done. We're not going to go down that ugly path. We're good. So it signals the person to do something new and even to feel something new after they leave. And that's just a level one. That's what I do only really in the first session. But then after that, I get to the real underlying pattern and I can remove and eradicate that limiting belief in session two. And that's the powerhouse of what I do. And that from that session on, they really are different. If I had that done on me when I was waking up dreaming about dying, I know now what that pattern was. I know exactly where it came from in my childhood. I can explain to anyone why I felt it. And if I had done what I do, then it would have just been gone. I wouldn't have woken up with that feeling. It takes the feeling away. Now, 14 years of therapy that I did, she was a great therapist too. It helped me manage it and understand it, but it really didn't take the feeling away.
Can we go a little bit deeper about when compared to talk therapy? Because essentially what you're talking about is self-awareness. Both talk therapy and hypnotherapy, you're getting the person to really understand what is deep within them. And that is like the fuel that is going towards transformation, right?
Yes.
But so both talk therapy and hypnotherapy starts out with different methodologies getting to the self-awareness. But then how
Yeah.
does the end differ? And why is it so much more efficient with hypnotherapy?
Okay, I love that you asked that question. Great. Yes. In the beginning, we do the same thing. In my first half of my session, I'm doing talk therapy, right? Absolutely. So I am figuring out the puzzle of that person and the pattern that's in them. And then when I reflect that back to them, they say, usually, almost always, oh my gosh, yes, that makes so much sense. So now we're on the same page. We know what's going on inside of them. Without hypnotherapy, then they might go home and, okay, when this pops up, you now know it's a trigger. And what's going on in life is not as big as it feels to you. It's just pushing your buttons of all this pain. And then it makes you explode. But it's not about the thing that happened. And then they can manage that, learn ways to talk through it, self soothe, all that, right? But here's the difference in what I do when I know what that pattern is. This is what's brilliant about what I do. In hypnosis, when the client is nice and relaxed, and I've done that nice induction and they're just feeling completely at peace and they know they're here to heal, I will ask them to bring up the feeling that they have felt for far too long. It's the feeling of nobody gives me attention, nobody, I have to work so hard for attention, or I have to please everybody else, or I just, some people even just feel like self-hatred in there, or whatever it is. They bring up the feeling by imagining a situation that'll make them feel that way. They felt it for so long that that's not hard for them. Okay. When they bring up the feeling, it's in their bodies. And then I say, do you feel that all over or is it concentrated somewhere? It's sometimes both. Someone will say, oh my gosh, it's here in my chest. Oh, it's in my head, or it's all over. That feeling that's in the body, the subconscious can tune into because the subconscious knows that feeling. That feeling was there every time the person felt it. So then what I do is I say, all right, just feel that feeling. We're going to go younger and smaller. And we regress them to where another memory pops up, okay, where they felt this way. It always happens. A memory will pop up, and then I'm asking them about the memory. What's happening? How are you feeling? What are you thinking? And then if it's not the earliest time they felt it, I'm going to go earlier and younger. My goal is to get to the what's called the initial sensitizing event. Let's say my client now is having a 2-year-old memory. They're a 2-year-old and something's happening where they cannot get attention. I'm just going to stick on that example. Like they just want mom or dad to pay attention to them and they can't get them to. If that was the first time they felt it, that's the place where this limiting belief exists in them. There's like a 2-year-old inside of them that since she had to feel that and couldn't handle it, she became the protector of that person for the rest of her life. Like you have to find a way to get attention. That's what you're now here for, because this feeling of not ever getting it's terrible. So you got to start learning what will get it for you. You got to behave well. You got to be perfect. You got to whatever. And that is still running in my adult client, but it's a 2-year-old thing. So what happens in that is a healing experience where I have the grown up in my chair. I ask them, can you see that 2-year-old you? And they can. And then I ask them, Is there anything wrong with that child? No. They get teary? No. Is she lovable? Yes. Does she deserve the attention she's seeking? Absolutely. And they feel this love and empathy and protection and knowingness that child always deserved it. The 2-year-old couldn't conclude that because she's 2 years old. We can't conclude that our parents aren't good because they're God to us when we're 2 years old. But the grown up can see it. And then what happens is a healing process where the grown up tells the 2-year-old what's true and then becomes the one who will hold her, love her, tell her that she doesn't ever have to do that anymore. That grown up loves you. I'm going to take care of you. And I'm going to make sure that I meet all of your needs now so you never have to feel this way again. It completely convinces the 2-year-old self, where all of this started, that she doesn't have to do it anymore. And it puts her inside of the heart of the grown up that now when my grown up leaves that office, a lot of things happen. One is she's got a mission and a purpose. Some people don't feel like they have a purpose. If you are now taking care of the inner you who used to have to feel that way and make sure that you don't ever feel that way again, you have a real strong purpose. You also are a hero and a cycle breaker in a family, which is a very respectable thing. To become a kind of loving entity that nobody gave you the template for is something you can love and respect now. So what happens is they feel different after that, and they know something they didn't know before. And I'll ask them to finish my sentence. I have changed because now I know, and I let them finish it. And they say things like, I know it was never about me. It was never, I know that I absolutely deserve for all my needs to be met, to be purely loved and cared for. And they're different. They feel different. And then they go out in the world and they don't act the same way. They don't people please anymore. It's really something.
So it seems like there's three stages of self-awareness, right? First level of self-awareness is you're just going through life. You at least have some self-awareness to know maybe something is wrong and maybe I need help. And maybe that's
Yes.
what brings them to on a chair with you to have sessions. The second
Yes.
level of self-awareness is when you and the other person are working together using talk therapy to get on the same page. Now they're aware
Yes.
of the problem at a logical level. And then there's a
Yes.
third level of self-awareness that is the post-hypnotherapy session, where they have truly seen the root cause of the problem and now have been able to forgive themselves and move on. For those who are listening to this, who are not on the second stage yet because they're not with you, and obviously have
Yeah.
not on the third stage yet, how do
Right.
you go about cultivating that stage one self-awareness where that you even know that something's wrong? Because a lot of
Yeah.
people just go through life thinking this is just how things are and this is just normal because everybody's talking about trauma.
They really do. They really do. Yeah. And so what I want them to know, anyone who's feeling that way listening to this, is there is a whole level higher that we all have a birthright to feel and experience in life. The reason most people aren't talking about it is because most people don't go after it as hard as I have because I needed to. But those who have know there's a whole other level. Now, those who haven't realized that yet, they tend to love company. They make themselves feel better by going, that's how my other friends' marriages are too. That's how her job feels to her too. And misery or mediocrity loves company. But if you're not satisfied, if you're just not satisfied, I want to prove to you that's not how it has to be. And that's Mark why after getting the results I was getting in my office, I have to do more. Now I still have a few more spots, but I'm pretty full. Once that was done, I'm like, I have to do a podcast. I have to do a YouTube. I have to do more. I'm going to write books. I have to let people know this way of feeling, it's not enough. We are made for more. So if people are feeling just a little bit dissatisfied, it would literally take 2 sessions for me to prove to them that there's more available to them. And the beautiful thing is, once you start to realize, here's the thing that's amazing. Once you realize it, once you know that this did something for you, we don't have to stop. It's not just about removing the blocks. Now it's all about making dreams come true too. This power of our minds can do all of that once we start using it, once we find someone who can teach us how to use it. As an educator, do you have any idea how angry I am that children aren't taught this from the time they're in elementary school? It infuriates me. They have this beautiful power inside of them, and it gets squashed by the educational system. It just does. Imagination gets neglected for testing, for stuff that they don't care about yet. So, anyway, if they're feeling dissatisfaction, that's the sign. Go after something more. There is more here, and it lives inside of you. And there's nothing wrong with you. You're just a buried treasure, buried over what people say about how life is, what people say about how work is, and buried with limiting beliefs that got there because our parents weren't perfect. None of us were perfect, but something got buried and it created a limit in there that just can get right out of the way and you don't have to feel that way anymore.
Caring for somebody, loving somebody, healing them in the way you do, incredibly taxing. Most of us are going through life difficulty and emotionally wrung out with a spouse and a couple of kids and a dog and a friend.
Yeah.
You are pouring yourself in with this level of passion for
Yes.
every single client.
Yeah.
How do you sustain that?
That's a great question. First of all, it is taxing. There's no question. It's also so important and beautiful. It's the meaning of life. So imagine that your work is the meaning of life every day. The meaning of life to me is that human beings connect on a deep, honest, vulnerable, real level for the purpose of that person reaching a new level of peace, understanding, calm, joy, hope, and moving in the direction that they want to move in for their life. There's nothing more beautiful than that. So while it does take a tremendous amount of energy, I'm not going to lie, I go home tired. It also gives me nothing but satisfaction and beauty. There's nothing I'd rather do. It's why I miss work when I have time off. It also puts me in such a state of presence. I mean, I get to basically be in a meditative state all day because if I am with a human being and I have to figure the puzzle of them out in a way that serves them, I am present. There's no past or future going on there, right? So it's very good for me also to be in that state all day. But I'll tell you, here's the truth. On Saturdays, I can do it all week and love it. But on Saturdays, often I'm like, oh, I'm not doing anything today. Not a thing. I will not be doing anything that I don't want to do. And then on Sunday, I have rejuvenated energy, but I often do need a day of, yeah. And I do have children and I do have a dog, and I made a life out of loving because my limiting belief felt like my love didn't matter. So, this is a message for your listeners. Whatever your deepest pain point is, that's your superpower. When that gets healed, it's just the passion for that, for no one ever to have to feel that is what drives everything I do, every podcast episode, every YouTube channel, every client. So now everywhere I go, I have one mission, and that's to love in a way that serves whatever's in front of me. So if my dog wants me to throw that ball, I'll throw that ball. That dog is adorable and she's going to get my love. And I get my love too. That's another key. I get my love too. I get myself to the gym because I love it. I put food in my body because I love my body. Like I made a life out of love and it's pretty great.
What is a belief that you had 10 years ago that you've completely changed your mind about?
Oh, wow. Okay. 10 years ago ish, it might have been a little bit more than 10, but close enough that all of the problems in the world are because of me. Somehow, no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, it never gets really better. And it must be because something's wrong with me. How's that one?
Yeah.
Not fun. I don't miss those days at all. It could bring me to tears. I do not miss those days.
You talked about really asking yourself, does it feel right? You talked about wondering if you feel out of place. Is there any other question that you would want audience members to ask themselves that you use constantly to get people through a breakthrough?
Yeah. We all have an inner guidance system. That's our intuition. It's our deep self. It's a gift from the divine, right? Like something inside of us has a knowingness. And if we can tune into that better, our lives become better. The hardest part is not for people to hear it or listen to it. The hard part's acting on it. So, for example, I got when I was teaching, I got asked to add this extra class to my schedule. I was part-time. I was like a 80%, and they wanted me to go to full-time. I loved 80% because I was still a mom and I wanted to be an involved mom. My intuition when they asked me was, hell no. It was just an immediate hell no. I want some life balance. And I work every weekend for my lesson plans. Like one more class would upset the whole apple cart of my values. But the hard part was like, but I could be seen as that team player, but I could get a whole other group of kids that's getting the value of being in my classroom, but those weren't what I wanted to do. My gut told me hell no. So it was super hard to go say I'm sorry and lose popularity. Now I'm not going to be that teacher that they love and admire. I'm not going to get all the kudos and the accolades and the extra money. I'm going to get what feels right to me. So if I could give your audience one thing to take with them right now, when you hear that voice, that's the voice that's taking you to your best life. I'll give you one other example. As a mom or a dad, and someone's, hey, we need someone to start a little baseball league or baseball team or do this committee, and we're all plenty busy, and we get oh no. We get that no. How many people then say, sure, I'll do it? That's betraying the voice that knows how to take you to your life that you're going to love. But we betray it all the time. We give it away for acceptance, popularity, kudos, whatever. But those pale in comparison to a life we actually love that's aligned with our deepest values. So that's a hard thing to do, but it's a really good thing to just start paying attention to. What does the inner voice say, and how often do you betray it? Now, here's a really good clue for that. If you get an inner voice and you want to say the hard thing, that person's not going to be happy with. Don't answer in real time. Okay. So if someone comes to me and they're like, we need another mom on this committee. And I'm like, no, my plate's full and I want some time just with my kids. I want downtime with my husband. It's a no. I'm going to say, that sounds like something I need to think about, and I'll check with my husband and look at my calendar. I will text you tomorrow with an answer. Now, I've just given myself 24 hours to really ask myself, is that going to enhance life? Because this is important. If we're drained, exhausted, and tired, and then maybe even resentful, we're not good for anyone. When I talked about I get my own love too, I get to do the things that keep me energized, happy, and alive, because that's when it all pours out of me to my clients, to my family, and I have more capacity. So another myth is that we're supposed to be serving everyone else. Now, I serve people all the time, but the difference is I'm deeply happy. When we're deeply happy, we're not sacrificing for people. It just pours out of us. We feel so amazing that we just automatically want other people to feel that way. And if someone's not, we automatically want to help. So the most unselfish thing that we can do is follow our inner guidance system to what makes us truly, deeply satisfied and happy. That's going to be the very best thing for our spouse, our children, our dogs, our colleagues, our clients, all of it. But people give it away all the time for acceptance, approval. So we have to get rid of we have to not be popular. And that's hard. That's peak performers. Peak performers have probably given up popularity, because I don't think you can peak perform if you're still trying to please the other people. I don't think you can.
Yeah. We talked about a little bit about your early journey in life. We talked about your school experience as a teacher. We talked about transitioning into hypnotherapy and how all of these things have shaped you to become who you are. What lessons from your 30-year marriage has shaped you the way you are and how you view connection and healing?
Oh gosh, so glad that you asked that. I'm so glad you asked that. This answer is not going to be comfortable for people, but it's true. Okay. I didn't have a good template for marriage anywhere that I looked. I was like, I don't think I want to do that. I don't think anyone's got that figured out. But I left myself an unless it's like this, unless it's truly, deeply, I get to be me and he gets to be him. And somehow we both love each other exactly the way we are. When I met my husband and when he proposed, I had to define what do we mean by marriage? Because I'm looking around not that impressed with most people's marriages. So we set out to define it for ourselves. And what we said was, we don't know what life is an adventure. We're figuring out life. So what we want it to be is that we're celebrating that we found each other and we're going to go through life together, and each of us separately is having adventures and doing what we love and following our passions. But if there's something that truly you need to do and it takes you away from me, since I love you, I should be able to say yes to you for that. And same with me. If there's something I must do and it takes me away from you, I'm going to share that with you, and you try your best to let me do that. So we set off on an adventure like that. And that's what we do to this day, 30 years later. We every Saturday morning we sit and have coffee. We have date night every week. And what we're doing is talking about what's life showing you? What's happening with the dreams that are coming true for you and vice versa, and we're examining what's going on in life together. And so we're two individuals. We don't expect to be the same, but because of the relationship, we both grow. And that's the whole point of relationship, is that both individuals grow because of the relationship. And the relationship stays strong because both people grow, right? Now, when that happens, there aren't very many people who can turn your head and be like, oh, that guy, that doesn't compare to a deeply connected, honest, open person sharing with another person doing the same thing. Nothing can compete with that over time. But it's been a lot of vulnerability. It's been a lot of, oh God, I don't want to tell you this, but I have to. It has not been easy. There have been times where we've had to explore things that we've wondered if they're going to take us away, and then talked about it and gotten deep down and dirty and uncomfortable. And then because we can do that, nothing competes with it. So it's funny that you asked this, because the institution of marriage, as most people look at it, can also evolve to a higher level. Just like mediocre amounts of joy is not enough. We have a birthright for more. Same with our relationships. We can deepen them, and people need to know how to do that. And God, there's so much work to be done. I think about young people trying to date these days and how hard of a time they're having. I got to write a book about that, like how to deepen a relationship slowly in a positive way. They're struggling with that. But that's what we did. That's what we've done. That's what keeps working. And I think it's a matter of also of like, we've never said till death do us part, really. It's more like, let's just keep choosing each other every day until for some reason we can't. That's just never happened, and it probably won't.
Love it. Choice over imprisonment is a wonderful way to look at things. And it is true. It's true for relationship. It's true for jobs. It's true for career choices. It's true for all of these things.
Yeah,
Sometimes we ironically get married to a job and we feel that we don't have a choice anymore. And now all of a sudden we're living a life that we don't want, when joy
that's
is
right.
just the other end of it. And it starts with self-awareness. So Sheila, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be able to talk to you, to get into the mind of somebody who has actively shaped their life to bring a certain level of satiety and joy into their own lives, but also to countless individuals otherwise. Tell the audience, where can they find you? What's going on in your life?
Okay. First of all, Mark, thank you. This has been such a pleasure. I really appreciate it. My website is shifthypnosis.org, and that's about my hypnotherapy practice. My podcast is Shift is Happening. My YouTube channel is Shift is Happening Now, and my email is Sheila, Sheila, at shifthypnosis.org. So feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, my pleasure. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thanks.